Introducing Tony and Other People, a podcast. Here's your host, Tony Levesque.
Erik, Del Suelo.
Hello.
You got the rest of the band here?
The rest of my band?
Yeah.
They're tucked away in the undercarriage of the bus right now.
Yeah.
No one without the boys right now.
Doing solo.
Going solo.
With the Dead South, Hoot and Hollers.
Yeah.
Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's the dream team. It's the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
That's I'm excited. Quite a thing. So you got a new album out and book.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, it was released in September, officially, and it is called The Musician's Compass, a 12-step program. And it's a novel album combination that chronicles a young folk punk band going from a big show on a Saturday night in Berlin to a small show on a Sunday night in a smaller German city called Wuppertal. And the story is divided into 12 segments that I've observed happened kind of day to day for any sort of startup touring band. Just kind of sort of like the cliched 12 steps, and so I kind of riff on the famous 12-step program.
Right.
Just as I like double meanings in a lot of things. Mm-hmm. All of the song titles from the project have double meanings and all that. So, yeah.
So it ties in with the album with the 12 tracks for each chapter.
Yeah.
But something to do with keys as well, right?
Yeah. So I learned a lot about myself when I made this project, and one of the big things was just how analytical or mathematical my brain is in organizing artistic projects. And a lot of people have perhaps conceptions of artists being entirely right-brained or just free-flowy or whatever, but this project was conceived with using a lot of numerology or just looking at patterns. And when I laid out the 12 steps, that was just a fluke. It just happened to be. And then I looked up at a clock, and everywhere you see a standard analog clock, it's got 12 numbers on it and it goes in a circle. And I'm like, whoa, that's kind of a chilling coincidence. And then, so I'm kind of sketching this story out, 12 steps going around in a clock. And then I was preparing for a music workshop, and I was going to teach the circle of fifths. And the circle of fifths is the 12 notes that we use in all of Western music in a circle. And it was I'm like, oh my God, that's another 12-step program. That's it. And so I kept on noticing all of these coincidences with the number 12 and with music, and I had a lot of fun. Depending on who you are, you might say all of the coincidences matter a lot, and some people might just say just purely happenstance, but I had a lot of fun in making the project, kind of playing between the divine intervention and just some random fun of it all. So yeah,
I like how the compass too, because you're on the road. There's a lot of double meanings with, you're right, on everything on the album and the book.
Yeah, the concept of the compass is, I think that for me in making the project, there's a lot of soul searching, figuring out where exactly music fit into my life, in the sense of having experienced a broad spectrum of different ways of music being in my life, from it being a thing that I do with friends, in our spare time in the basement, to seeing some of the business aspects of it, to it being a vehicle for adventure, expression, and music creeps into the cracks of life, in so many different ways.
Sorry, guys. Gotta get my gitch.
And and so like the idea of the compass was, I guess, partially trying to finding like a personal sense of meaning in the midst of the greater thing.
Right. So I noticed while reading it that I know you. You know, we've met and hung out, and reading the book, it was almost immediately. You know, I'm picturing you to start out with because you wrote the book.
Yeah.
And immediately the picture changed into somebody else. Like,
Right.
I'm sure you did a lot of soul searching, but it seems, you know, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it was you almost immediately.
Yeah.
To where, I don't know where I'm going with this, but, you know, it was a character for sure, and you dive deep into that.
Yeah. Well, I've only ever written in the first person, and part of where that came from was, like, people always talk about like change, like we need to stop polluting the rivers, and they need to stop being racist, and there's all of this like diffusion of responsibility by saying like we or they, and I thought that like the best way to have it to be an example or to make change is to say things in the first person.
Right.
And so I don't know, maybe I'm just like not evolved enough as a writer to like write in the third person yet.
Well, I'm just saying it seemed like you did. You know what I mean? It took me away from that. I don't know, in a good way.
Yeah. And so I kind of like put myself in the driver's seat of this character, and I really wanted to, like, everything that he does I've felt through experience. Like his like when I'm like worn down and I'm in like the worst part of myself, it's like the way I am about like money, or the way I am about like relationships, or the way I am with like about like just like recognition, it's like nothing seems to be enough, and I kind of wanted to like have this like person that I could put all of like the worst traits in, and like just as an example of like you know, the spectrum of human emotions. And so like this character is like, I don't know, I don't think he's like the greatest person, but at the same time there's a sense of understanding why he's the way that he is, and that's the point I wanted to get across.
Well, it's really relatable because we're all not the greatest person, you know.
Yeah.
So it felt real.
Yeah, it's cool. Happy that you like that's an intricate thing, and I don't. I was a little bit concerned that people would have read the story and like assumed that it was like me full on, and that's not me. It's not how I am. But those dark corners certainly exist within me if like life circumstances like push me in that way. And I think that's why humans are so interesting, because we're capable of such great good or evil, and
That duality.
yeah,
That's what we all need.
that's right.
So this is your second album and book, and you plan on a third?
Yeah, I'm in this really sometimes daunting, sometimes really exciting phase of when you get a big creative project off. There's this vacuum of energy, and in between these last tours, we were home for 2 weeks.
Which has got to be nice.
It was so nice.
Yeah.
And after the first week of like, you know, hanging out with my friends and family and doing laundry and doing all the things, I kind of almost panicked a little bit, because the thing that I was working on for a couple of years was all of a sudden gone.
Right.
And it took me a few days to just talk myself into just relaxing and not having to work on something.
Right.
But that had been my momentum and my pattern for a couple of years. And so now, like, I'm just not forcing anything, but like there's a little desk in my mind, and every now and then a paper will land on it and it'll be an idea, and I'll like either throw it in the wastebasket or like put it in a pile of maybes, and that's all I'm doing right now.
Well, you can never pass up good ideas.
Yeah.
You got to at least write them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I love the format, the long form format of the novel and full length album, but I am struggling a little bit on the business side of things. Like it was designed to contradict the quickness and fast paced nature of the digital world right now, and I'm really proud, and I think like I've fulfilled that rebellious part of me that came up in DIY punk rock and all that stuff. I'm happy that I did it, but I'm starting to re-examine, like, is it worth it to be so stubborn? And is there other ways that I can, like, still within my integrity make art that perhaps could be a bit more, like, digestible with the way that people are now receiving their art? So, yeah, thinking a little bit about, like, things like poetry or releasing like EPs or not sure what form it'll take, but
I really enjoyed the last album with the voice tracking with the songs. That was perfect for me. I sat out in my garage and listened to that, I think the full way through the first time, and that to me was a great format.
Yeah. And
maybe something more like that.
Cool.
You know.
Well, I'm happy you mentioned that. As a reminder too, that when I am home in December, I plan on getting this project done in an audio format.
So, audio book with the album on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, thanks for that.
Yeah.
That's good feedback.
I did really enjoy the book and the album especially, and we were talking earlier that I couldn't just pop the album in and listen to it, which I so bad wanted to do,
right.
But I had to read the chapter, play the song the whole way through before I could listen to the entire album, and then I'm sure the way that I listened to it then, you know, wouldn't have hit my ear the same or my brain the same as if I just popped the CD in. Yeah. But reading the book, it made it way better.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I was at a writers conference. Man, I hope I didn't mention this in our last interview, but I was talking about at this literary conference. I was talking about my combination of the two disciplines, and somebody stood up and asked me, like, he's like, "Are you scared that by putting a story to a record, that it might like inhibit the listener from making their own story about it?" Because sometimes, like, I would say most of the time, music lyrics are like pretty ambiguous, and there might just be like 2 or 3 lines in there that give you enough for like your subconscious to build like it's sort of like a tarot card. It's like you see a thing and then all of a sudden whatever your life is, it is imposed on the art. Whereas like with something like my projects, there's the album, but it's very clearly already got a story designated to it.
Right.
And I mean, I don't want to say worried about it because it's like not like I lost any sleep on it, but it's just an interesting contemplation, I guess, on does it in fact make the music better or not?
But there's a hard way, you know, you can't really know that by not, you know, whichever one you listen to first, you know, whether you read the book and then the album or just listen to the album, there's no, you can't go back. There's no way to know which is better.
Yeah.
You know, really.
Yeah. But for me as a songwriter or even a prose writer, another thing that I've learned in doing these last 2 projects is the importance for me to have constraints in an artistic project. I don't know, it's like, call it the MacGyver syndrome or whatever, but when I was making the Musician's Compass, I had this outline of a story, so right away, like, I had a structure in which to focus on lyric writing. And if I didn't have that, it's like, if somebody would have said, Eric, make a record, it's like, okay, but like, about what? Because life is just so vast and infinite. Give me a focus and I'll write you the thing. And so I gave myself these constraints, and so all of a sudden I have this story about this band on tour. And then I took it a step further, and I decided that the 12 chapters were going to correspond with the order of the circle of fifths musically.
Right.
So all of a sudden, chapter 1 had to have something to do with the key of G, and that musical theory formula got further refined. Like, when I was making this thing, I had a whiteboard in this small room in my house I was living at the time, and it looked like a crazy math professor's.
It looked like Big Bang Theory in the background.
Man, yeah, and I was drawing like I had like sine graphs and it was a really exciting time because I was computing the elements of classical story structure in the hero's journey as laid out by Joseph Campbell, and then I was looking at the circle of fifths, and somehow like this whole thing just like came and locked together in this brilliant way. And that gave me a very definitive focus, which I think helped me as a songwriter. And the amount of like amazing, like, you want to call it synchronicity or coincidence or whatever, all of these mechanisms locking together to make this project work is something that I don't think I could have ever like just conceived on my own. If that makes sense. Like it really was. This is hard to explain, but in May, after a tour of the Dead South in the UK, I went and I spent a week in Spain.
Okay.
I found an artist residency where I just went and like hermited, and I worked really hard on finishing this thing because I knew I needed to gain some ground. And I had 2 days left before I went home, so I went into Barcelona and I checked out Gaudi's works, famous architect, La Sagrada Familia, and like he kind of, like the stuff he designs. And for those who've never seen it, it kind of looks like a Dali painting. Like, it's really surreal, but just like impeccably designed. It's so special. And his thing was that like God made everything in nature, like the design of everything in nature is perfect. And so what he did is just observe patterns in nature and then apply it to his architecture. And so I feel with the musician's compass, I just spent all this time observing these like patterns of human behavior and patterns of like just musical theory, and just sat back and observed it and just let them on their own all fall into place.
Let the puzzle put itself together.
And I get goosebumps talking about it, and I think that like I don't think anybody will fully understand the extent of like the magic in this project, but it I don't know, like I don't know if it matters, I guess, because it was really fun for me.
So what you're saying is real, true music nerds are gonna find this and go nuts.
Yeah, I mean that was one of my hopes, that this would be like a bit of a beacon light for anybody out there who has had like a thirst for this capacity of music. I think a lot of people just like music's a thing you put on when you're mowing the lawn or when you're having some beers with friends. And when I discovered music as like a teenager, it was like an escape, and like the more like nerdy and intellectual I could get into it, it just was like a safe place for me. And so I know there's people out there like that, but I have noticed that some musicians I approach with this project, I mentioned like this musical theory component to it, and they don't really want anything to do with it, because within like the music world there's a bit of a divide with like the highly educated music people and the people who just like learn by ear and by feel. And Yeah, I think that it's like there's like kind of like this maybe snobby attitude or like, I don't know, way of being around the music theory types.
Right.
That like we know more than you, and so there's kind of this divide, and I really wanted this thing to be a bridge between like music can be like the record for the most part is very poppy, very accessible. I wanted it to be very accessible for anybody. Pick any song on the record, put it on. You don't need to know anything, and you can just tap your toe to it. But I wanted there to be this aspect that if you were curious and it would like nourish your life somehow, this is a project you can go really deep on.
Right.
And learn a lot. But anyways.
It's a great album. I love it.
Thanks, man.
But it is nice too that you don't have to be a musician, you don't have to understand anything about music, and you can really enjoy the book and the album. You know, even if you have an interest, like you were saying, you know, in learning something about music, you could dive deep into it and really learn a lot.
Like I was taught about modes. Like this project uses this musical concept of modes quite prominently, and I was taught those you know, when I was taking guitar lessons in high school, and they were explained to me very well, but other than like in pure jazz settings, I had no application for modes.
Right.
And here in like a pop alternative rock record, whatever you want to call it, it is a modal album, and you're never gonna hear like a modal song on pop radio. You're never gonna. It's just not a thing that happens. So, like that little rebellious part of me is like sneaking in like jazz theory to people who like would never know that it's happening. It's like when you put like a medicine in your pet's food and they don't know that they're eating the medicine, but they are. Mm-hmm. And but with the hopes that you know, some young musician out there would read the appendix of the book. Oh, that's a mode, and oh, I can use it in my songwriting. You know, we don't all have to use the same chord progressions over and over and over and over.
And the same three chords.
Yeah, exactly. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's like, that's cool too.
Sometimes that sounds good. Sometimes.
They work for a reason, that's for sure. So.
Did you ever get that D16?
The D16?
Yeah. Isn't that what you're singing about in the song?
Oh, the T60.
T60?
T60, yeah.
I thought you were talking about a Martin guitar.
Oh, no. The T60 was made in like the late 70s, early 80s.
Wow, I feel really dumb now.
Oh, no.
I thought you were saying that D16.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Like, they sound the same. Yeah. And they're both guitars, and
Yeah, so you did. You're not the D16.
Yeah, no, the
T60.
Yeah. Well, and like for the record, it's official on the record. The T60 was the first guitar I owned, and my parents bought that for me. Mm-hmm. The guitar that I actually bought with my newspaper money was a Fender acoustic guitar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
First guitar was a Fender acoustic.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, the T60 was my first real instrument I own, and still have it.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty minimalist in life. Like if I don't use something for a year or two, I feel like it should be being used.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're on the road all the time too.
Yeah. But that one is just like I don't know how I could part with it.
Yeah.
It's the first one.
A lot of blood on there, I'm sure.
A little bit, actually.
Yeah. So how did you get your start in music? What in school did you play, or how did you get your start?
I don't remember the exact years. It would have been like grade 4-ish. Okay. I did a couple years of 1 or 2 years of piano lessons. Okay. And
that's a great start.
Yeah, like
they say, you know, that's how I started as well. And you know, they say if you plan on learning an instrument, learn the piano first. Yeah. Because then everything else come easy.
I understood how to read music, like read notation and basic concepts of like, you know, time signatures and keys and things like that. When I was 9 years old or whatever it was, I didn't realize how important that was. Mm-hmm. like every 9-year-old, I just wanted to play like video games or whatever. And so I kind of stopped playing the piano. And then in grade 7, I was just a couple of my friends started playing guitar, and for whatever reason, I just wanted to be involved in their conversations. And so I asked for some guitar lessons, and lucky enough, my parents were supportive of that. And so I kind of did these guitar lessons, and they were just a thing. They're just like, it's like a peripheral part of my life. But at the end of grade 8, I got a ticket to a punk show, and I went, and that was it. I went
your life.
I went to a concert. It was like 400 kids, like big circle pit, and like just the energy of that room, and like that was for me. It clicked. It's like, oh, that's why you put effort in on learning your instrument. Like that's because you get to do that.
Yeah.
And once I saw that, it's like just never look back. Like an hour a day at least for like pretty much since then. I've been playing the guitar. So it was kind of it was a lot of piling up of like this kindling, and then that was the spark. Boom, that was it.
And you learn everything.
Yeah. That's what I did. Just became obsessive, actually.
So I don't think I ever asked you this before, but how did you end up with the Dead South?
So I was, so like throughout my teens, I played in a bunch of punk bands, and then I was also like studying jazz music with my teacher. So I was in like punk bands and like doing jazz combos and stuff. And then the punk scene kind of fizzled a little bit, and once again, I didn't appreciate how cool it was that I was learning jazz at the time. It was just a thing that I felt like I had to do. And then in my early 20s, I joined a band called the Down On Boys, where I kind of like roots blues. Like we started off as a string band, like really similar to like Dead South, like instrumentation. Didn't have a cello, but and then I was playing electric bass with the Andino Sons, like a Chilean folk rock band, and just like staying involved in the musical community. And it happened to be that right when I was quitting the job that I had to focus on music a bit more full time, the touring cellist with the Dead South, or Danny couldn't do a tour or something to that effect, and they called me up and asked if I could fill in. And it was just the perfect storm of like me needing the work and then needing a guy, and all of my years of like playing in other bands and playing different instruments had made it possible that I could join them. So it was really really lucky.
Yeah.
And that would have been fall of 2015. So just over 3 years ago, I played my first show with them.
Wow. So you played quite a bit of that 3 years then too.
Yeah.
They tour heavy.
Yeah.
And Danny doesn't much.
Yeah. He's like it appears that he's back full time now. But there was a period of time there where he was finishing his school, and there's a stretch where I was doing most of the long, far traveling. So, and for me at that point in my life, that was all I wanted to do. Like the longer the tour, the further away from home, like get me crazy.
Yeah. Amazing new experiences and getting to see the world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where's your favorite place to be besides home?
Besides home, like for music or just in general?
Just to be.
My God. I think if I could articulate that answer, it would eliminate a lot of the thoughts in my head right now. I feel like I'm at a bit of with the finishing of this last project, I'm at a bit of a life's crossroads trying to figure out like where I should be. But Yeah, I mean, as far as I don't know, I can't answer that.
Okay.
That's a tough one. Sorry. Yeah.
Where's your favorite place to play then?
Favorite place to play?
Mm-hmm.
I'm discovering like there's different traits.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no like singular perfect place, but there's different like playing in Germany in my experience has been like excellent for hospitality and like the audiences like they show up on time, they love checking out new music. I really struggle with that playing in like Western Canada where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that people kind of show up whenever, and there's a lot of like being on the cell phones during the show. We played in Quebec or in Montreal a few nights ago, and it was probably the rowdiest audience I've ever seen the Dead South have.
Yeah.
Really cool. And so I know that like they haven't toured like Spain or South America or anything like that, but I imagine it being like chaotic but lots of fun.
Yeah. All in a different way.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Like some of my favorite places to play music are just in a friend's living room. Actually, Yeah. Thinking back, like some of the best times I've had are just nobody's watching, nobody's recording. Have a drink, have a good conversation. Halfway through the conversation, somebody picks up a guitar, song happens. Next thing you know, like 3 or 4 hours go by, and you're just like leaving with like that feeling, like that was a good night.
So you don't have a girlfriend then?
I do have a girlfriend, but she loves music.
Yeah. Well, kind of need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd she think of the book?
She loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really cool. I was just finishing it when we started hanging out, and it was kind of one of the first people to have a read through it, which is always like, getting like the first beta reader to read through it is a bit of a nervous thing because, like, what if this thing is actually truly offensive or just like not good or doesn't make sense or whatever,
or some major thing that you didn't think about that kind of shines through or something. Yeah.
And so we had a lot of fun. We actually like read it out loud to each other, which was a lot of fun. And she's been a big supporter of it.
That's great.
Really great, yeah.
So the album process, recording in the studio, how long did that take to do the whole album?
The whole album, it's funny, the preparation surrounding it took months.
Now, you wrote it all yourself, or you had other musicians with it? You wrote every piece of it then?
Yeah, I wrote, I'm going to say 99.5% of it.
Okay.
There is the melody on A Less Supreme was written by the guy who played the drums on the record. But everything else I did. And the process was, I spent a couple of months just like really hashing out the songs, getting them as ready as they could be, and then the drummer and the bassist and the keyboard player came out. My mom lives in a small town just outside of Regina, and I like hired them for 4 days to like live out there essentially. We jammed 3 90-minute sessions a day. And the idea was like the songs existed in my head and on paper, but I needed to see how they gel with the band, and we just like worked them. And so like, and the guys I play with are wizards. They're just like, we've played together for a long time. They're just total music fans, and it came together really nicely. So that when it came time for the studio a month later, like almost the whole thing was tracked in a week.
Wow. Like
a very intense week. But we went in ready, and
nothing to be excited about.
That's my phone, sorry. Let me shut that off. You know what's funny about that? That's the news guy at the radio station.
Okay.
And I stole his voice and made it my ringtone. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so the tracking took a week, and then I went away like on that tour. My last day of tracking was like a day before we left on that September tour.
Okay.
Where I met you.
Yep.
And so I went home, and then like the week I was home for, did like backup vocals, and like the horn section came in, and just the odds and ends. But there was, it's a 40-minute album. For every like minute on that record is probably like 5 hours of me walking around the streets of Regina at night, listening to mixes and like taking notes. And the real battle happened in like the mixing room, and I guess like before we went into the studio. So,
right.
Yeah.
So going in to record it wasn't awful.
No. No. That's like the fun, exciting, like.
Now I get to make it happen.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I'm not going to say that writing exams are fun at all, but when you go in and you like know your shit, it's like you just go in and you do it, and you're confident about it. But when you go in and you're like unprepared, it's like really stressful.
Right.
And I feel like we went in like feeling pretty good. So, yeah.
Ready for battle.
Yeah. Cool thing too about the making of this record was like we had Monday to Friday, and I was commuting to Regina Beach, into Regina, so like 45-minute drive at the end of every day. And it was me and the engineer were left Friday night, and it was like 10 or 11 p.m. and my guitar was set up, and I'm like, we're both super exhausted, and we hadn't done any of the guitar leads yet. And arguably my favorite part of any project is like the lead guitar part. Yeah, I know, like it's just always going to be the coolest part. And I'm like, let me run one take in every song. And we're both loopy. We had nothing to lose, like whatever, just an extra hour. We had planned to like do it at a later date. I ended up, everything that's on the record happened like in that hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah, just like.
So all the leads on the whole album.
Yeah, happened then, and it was once again one of those things that you can't plan. Just like one of those circumstances. Like, this is the moment where this is going to happen, and it did. So yeah.
Well, I had a friend tell me at one time that there's two ways of recording: to catch a moment, or for perfection.
Yes. Yeah.
And it sounds like it was a combination of both.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I've never done a full project of any kind where it's focused around like live recording. But that's something that's certainly in my contemplations for the next project. I have this, I don't know if I should talk about it, my next idea, but I have this idea that I've wanted to do for a long time, where I like write, or just like not even write, but just collect ideas from my friends that I've heard singing, but a collection of campfire songs, and then invite like 10-15 of my favorite people to make music with, and then set up microphones like around a campfire, and just get everyone a little bit cut, and just like sing these songs, and then just have like a live album recorded around a campfire, patent pending.
I was gonna say, you better jump on that one. It's a great idea. Sound of the crackling and the man, that'd be good. Probably a nightmare for recording.
Yeah. I have to get the recording engineer a new headlamp or something.
Yeah. So we had talked about this before with a podcast. How come you're not starting one yet?
Well, Nate and I had talked about doing one, and like there was a tour or two where I actually brought a little bit of recording stuff with me, and I think I made it out to be too big of a deal. Like I thought that we had to have like these certain fancy microphones, and where like doesn't have to be that complicated, and the hosting of it doesn't need to be that complicated. And I think I just was getting a little bit overwhelmed, and in the midst of doing that and trying to finish the project and everything else going on in Dead South Universe, we never really seemed to pull it together.
It's never too late.
It's not too late, and I think now that like touring circumstances have changed with the Dead South, there's a little bit more time in a day that like something like this could actually be feasible. So the intention's there, the dream's still there. Just wait for the right time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this interview. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to seeing you since, our last, 2 interviews?
Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to seeing you just to see you, but also, this is like, really, I get a lot of excitement out of this, because I put like years into making a thing, and, a few people, once they check it out, will be like, hey man, nice story, and that's kind of the end of it. But to actually like talk mechanics about what goes into it is one of my like passions, and there's not many avenues where I get to like express it. So thank you for asking me these questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Tony and Other People, a podcast. Questions, comments, concerns for Tony's overall well-being? Want to be part of the show? Find us on Facebook or email us at tonyandotherpeople@gmail.com.